All right, so the next part is what I'm not looking forward to because I think it's going to be difficult. So we're going to talk a little bit about the conversation that's never ending. Is a little bit about the prioritization and how to know when and where to do stuff and this over that. And I think it plays into the planning and like how to know what to spray where and when. So a lot of these species you can spray a lot of different ways. You can spray in the winter, you can spray in the fall, spray in the summer. You can use different chemicals. You can use cheap chemicals. You can use expensive chemicals. And trying to balance that out to make a work plan that works. So we all have limited funds. We all have more work to do than what we have time to do. And you're having to prioritize how to get this stuff done. So it's kind of a balancing act on your prioritizations and what you can fit in what time frame. So frag is a good example. We can only spray frag in the fall, right? No one's out there spraying in the spring spraying their frag. So you're stuck. If you want to do frag, you're doing that work in the fall. What else happens in the fall? You have seasonals going back to school. You have the end of your field season winding down. You're trying to cram everything in. You're trying to finish up your knotweeds. We have all our Forest Service work because of the butterflies again. We can't spray all those Forest Service sites till after August 15th. So you're cramming all that work in. So if we choose to take on frag, we're giving up other stuff. Or we're going to give up our frag for the other priorities. Because that's kind of the season that you're stuck in that fall. So trying to balance what to spray, when and where with what you're trying to get done, and kind of how you make those decisions is one of the things we wanted to talk about. How many of you guys are completely comfortable giving me a rate and a chemical and a method for any species approach? Like how many of you guys like, what's the best method for spraying China Jam, or Teasel, or knotweed, or all these? So it's a decision process, and it's a decision you have to make educated, like you have to be somewhat educated in these chemicals, how they work, and all the different methods that work for them in order to start making these decisions. But making the wrong decisions and doing stuff at the wrong time is a waste of money. You're just putting chemical out there for no reason. Is that a good start?
Yeah, it's a good start. I think understanding the basics of, I mean, we're not going to delve into the basics of herbicide. You can, delve right into what does this particular herbicide do? Is it a growth regulator? Is it a growth inhibitor? All this sort of good stuff. We're not delving into that. But understanding, your priority species, what you have time for. Yeah, if you had time to go out to a Japanese knotweed site 3-4 times a year, unlimited funds, unlimited availability of staff, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We don't. We literally visit knotweed one time. That's all we can really, we have so much, as Drew said, fall is super busy. So we're going out, we're either doing our follow-up monitoring, or we're hitting our initial treatment or a secondary treatment, something like that in the fall time. We have a set time that's designated for knotweed. But understanding the basics of, right down to the general of, okay, are you doing a cut stump? Are you doing a foliar application? Are you doing an injection? Are you doing a base of bark? Gulp of death? Understanding the benefits to all those, and then understanding the product to use. What are you using? A generalized herbicide? Are you using a specialized herbicide? Broadleaf selective herbicide? There's Forbes and other things out there that are much more susceptible. Versus, are you just using a generic glyphosate type of a product? Understanding the basics, I think, can get you on the roadmap you need to go on. And in terms of setting that up, we put together this table, which is really nice to have, but it's not the end all be all. It's literally a collection of recommended methods from when he tested. When was that? A couple of years ago. He asked people around the state on recommended products that is used. This is not what he, is 100% recommending, but it is a nice roadmap of what we can use, and we'll see that when we go out in the field today.
So before we get to the table, Nick and I talked actually quite a few times. We spent a lot of hours on the phone recently talking about this field trip and talking about this conversation right here. And it really came back to, every time we talk about it, is financial versus ecological driven on our treatment decisions. What do we have the money for? What's the cheapest way we can do a lot of these treatments and still be effective? And what's the best for that site? So for the chemical, for the species around it, and those other things. And trying to balance those two different things is really how most of these treatment decisions get made. If we had all the money, I would probably do things differently than not having all the money in the world. So when we're looking at prioritizing these species and the methods for them. If you had, people call me all the time about, I have autumn melt, what do I do? And it's like, well, you can spray it all, leave it in place and let it die and it just sits there. Or if you have a ton of time and a tractor and a bunch of money and a chainsaw, go cut them all down, dig out all the roots, smooth it back over, pile it up, burn it all, get rid of all of it, and then spot spray everything that comes back. But how many people have time to do that on a 40-acre field versus I can just spray it, come back in a couple of years, and deal with it then? So it's really balancing that financial drive versus the ecological issues that you're dealing with at that site.
And that's gonna be at your guys' local level. Nobody can make that decision but you. I mean, you guys are the ones that have the funding. You guys are the ones that, hopefully your steering committee is guiding you in the right direction in terms of prioritization. Obviously grants, sometimes unfortunately, but grants drive prioritization based on different species, different things. And it's a realization that we all have to deal with. Like you said, I mean, how many sites of knotweed are out there? Just ungodly amounts, right? And it's priority of, your ecological drive. Okay, where are the high valued areas? Okay, if you have a, huge, massive Japanese knotweed site that's in a really high value area with, some T&E species that it potentially could go threaten, versus 10 tiny little spots in someone's backyard neighborhood, where do you draw that line? Where do you balance that? And it's ultimately going to be at your local level, and the grants that you're getting or you're utilizing. Nobody can make that decision but you guys. And finding that balance is a tough thing, and that's why we wanted to kind of at least bring it up and get you guys thinking about it, because it's not a quick and easy decision that we can answer. You guys can. It's a time thing that you guys as coordinators or key personnel is part of your job, and making those decisions for all these different sites for different species is sometimes challenging at times.
So I think I was talking to Sue the other day, and we talked about a good example of this was, how many of you guys have heard about all of the trees that killed in Critical Dunes area in my area? So people went out, they're spraying bittersweet, and imazapyr works for bittersweet, right? It's extreme overkill, but it works. So they went and they sprayed all these trees in Critical Dune areas on a city park, whatever that is, down in Saugatuck, and they killed 40 acres worth of trees on Critical Dunes and just massacred the area. Nothing was alive. Millions of dollars later, and like a huge lawsuit settlement that took like literally 6 or 7 years, that one got settled because they went and killed all that Critical Dune, all those trees, because somebody made a poor decision and didn't understand the chemical they were using, the site conditions, and what they had, and they were just spraying imazapyr straight onto trees to kill the bittersweet that was wrapped around it, and wasted a lot of time and money and caused a lot more issues because somebody didn't take the time to learn the chemical and to learn what they were using and understand the impacts of what they were spraying, where you could have easily done those treatments and been effective and not killed those trees using a different method and a different chemical, and probably a different rate than what they were using. And instead, it made a huge disaster that really scarred like Saugatuck, that area for chemical. They still don't want chemical used on any of their stuff. They're very anti-chemical down there. It's the worst thing in the world, and they would rather have knotweed go untreated than to have to use chemical, period. Like they don't want Roundup in their driveways because they had that terrible experience, and now some of their other invasives are getting out of hand because they have distrust with chemical because of someone's poor decisions. And that was Land Conservancy, or it was one of the big credible organizations. It wasn't a mom and pop shop who didn't know what they were doing who made a bad guess. It was somebody who's got a lot of years of experience doing this work and a lot of knowledge, and it happens. So I think it's important to understand this. So before I give you guys this table, I'm like terrified to give this table up. I really don't want to give it to anyone, because this table is what Nick and I think is a great tool, but you guys got to see it's a tool and it's not a final decision. If you look at this table and you see that a rate and a chemical is thrown out for a species, that is not our way of saying do it. That's our way of saying this is one of the options. Understand your site and understand these chemicals before you start using them at these rates. If I give you this table and you look at it and you say this isn't right, then don't do it. Like, you should know what you're doing with these chemicals before just taking this table and spraying with it.
Yeah.
But Nick and I thought it would be very valuable.
It's a tool.
If I could start to put something onto a piece of paper to help people with what to spray on what species and what time of year as a guide to help make decisions. And I put in very big letters at the top, important, this information and recommendations presented are meant to serve as a guideline. Before using pesticides, read and follow the label. The label's a lot. It says not internal use only. So I don't want this sent out to a bunch of people, because on the back is all the chemicals and what I would spray and rates that work for these species. But that doesn't mean people should go wild on this. You still have to understand how these chemicals work and why before you give this out. So please do not give this to other people, and do not use this unless you understand what you're doing.
Keep in mind where all these numbers came from is all accessible to all of you guys. There's BMPs that are already written out there. You know, there's a lot of information that is already publicly known. This is just kind of a consolidation to use as a tool. Okay? So it's not like we just made this up based on, you know, all of what we do. All this is based on, you know, recommendations from different published BMPs or, you know, credible sources that it's just not willy-nilly thrown out there. So once again, one of the bullet points here is what to do if you have no experience. We've all been there. Oh, you know, this is a new species. I don't know what to utilize. As we mentioned before, there's a lot of information now out there. Does it mean trust the first Google link that you find that says, oh yeah, go ahead and use, you know, glyphosate on Japanese knotweed, because those articles are still out there. Guaranteed, they're still out.
I'm still pro glyphosate or not.
Until you finish. Anyways, so there.
Sue, how amazing is that site look?
That's 1 year though, right?
No. That's 3 years.
3 years?
Come on.
Sprayed
Well,
once?
Huh?
Sprayed once?
No, a couple of times. Twice. It's better than some of the other sites that we have, other chemicals.
It looks nice.
I'm not saying it always works, but I think it shouldn't be written off. But
Well, the worst thing I hate is when I ask somebody why they use that, and say, well, I don't know, it's because somebody told me to.
Right. That's not what we want here.
this was our fear. We don't want that. Like, no. This is
And
just
I
to
would also
help.
just add that this evolves over time, so this will be out of date.
Sure.
You know, so your caveats are great. But the other thing I encourage you is that nobody knows the one right answer. There is no one right answer, but your feedback on prioritizing is critical to change funding sources so they meet the real need.
Yes.
So speak up.
I think your feedback on methods. If there's
Yeah.
something on here that doesn't
Yeah.
work, or you know something's better that's not on here, let people know. So like she said, she wants to know how to treat Chinese yams. Chinese yams are really easy to kill. And it's something that isn't hard to kill at all. If you use Garland 3A, it's a quick treatment. But if people don't know that, and you go and you have to go try all these things, then it's a waste of time for everyone. So,
And money, we all know, I mean, it comes down to that, is the ecological versus the financial angle. Something that we also talked about, Drew
answer that question.
Sure, no, I just want to throw something out there. Is anybody familiar with the MIPINS treatment database? Is everybody familiar with that? I just thought it'd be cool if we started contributing to that, and it sounds like this is a really good chunk of information.
The problem is that it usually requires a scientific paper to back it up, which most of us don't have. But we could try.
Maybe you could focus in on those where there's any big difference.
Something that Drew, just to kind of wrap this, kind of tie together, that he started with. You know, we don't always, he was talking about frag in the fall, all that sort of good stuff. What do you do if you can't always do it at your first choice? Prioritization, weather, you know, up here, you know, we treat frag in the fall, right? But our fall is a very, very narrow window of time, so.
Harvest mustard in like July too, so.
Right, exactly. So our times compared to downstate Michigan, we barely even start tackling garlic mustard until end of May because it's barely even there. Versus some of the southern systems. When are you guys tackling garlic mustard?
We're done at that.
You're done, like, yeah, so,
Garlic mustard into July this year too, but
Yeah.
it's not here.
yeah.
Last week.
Right. Yeah, we had snow in May, so. Keeping in mind, things you can't always control. Weather, we put on their partners. If you have hesitant partners, or if you have partners that, you know, unfortunately are doing things like the Mazapir debacle of Pot 6 or something like that. I don't know, whatever that was. You know, sometimes things aren't always in your control. What do you do if your first choice isn't your what you want? Understanding the product to understand that, okay, Autumn olive, yep, we could do, foliar spray in summer, but we're busy busting out garlic musk, we're busy busting out all these different species. Oh, well, we're not doing too much stuff in the early winter or things like that. Maybe let's look at the products and see and understand, autumn olive a little bit better and understand that we can do different types of applications at different times of year that may not be our first choice, but we can still actually have some sort of productive applications. Just using, autumn olive as an example.
So real quick, in front of this form, it's got the 8 different chemicals that I picked. So I put fast ones instead of 3A. I cooked them out, and it's 54%, not 44, so it's a little higher. So the front of the page has just the basic information about the chemicals, max application rates, rain fast time. So if it's going to rain, how long before the rain do you have to stop spraying? Additional PPE needed. Based on the label, and then it's got your restrictions for posting. So when you're posting the precautionary warnings you have to give the landowners, it's all down in one table so you don't have to remember. Flip it over and it's all color coded based on time of year. So at the very bottom it's a mixed rate conversion table for people who forget how many ounces are 5% if you're mixing a backpack. And then the keys are F is foliar, CS is cut stump, basal bark is BB, injection I, glove of death is D. And then the colors are rough guidelines for seasons. So it's really hard to put these into general baskets on timelines. So try to throw them in rough categories. It does, by no means is any of these ranked. So like if you look at autumn olive, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 8 different ones based on what chemical you want. And there's other options. This is just a start that if you don't have anything, this is at least a starting point. And if you have something, you can add this to, you can sub stuff in and out, you can do whatever. So just hoping this is helpful.
And not to use as like the end all be all. Keep in mind, as he put on there, the labels, the law, understanding your rates, understanding your the percentages that is on there for a reason of active ingredient, what the active ingredient, what's the point of using Vaseline versus Milestone or versus Rodeo, right? Understanding the different products you're using and why.
Can you talk a little bit about the adjuvants? Or the
Surfactants.
surfactants, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. What about?
Tell me about them, what are the issues,
What are the issues with them?
yeah.
I don't have any issues with them. So we pretty much are only using Signet nowadays, so that it doesn't get
Is
mixed
anybody
up.
else not using Signet, something else like?
And we use Agridex as when we do like our fall or our August, we
Okay.
Anything,
Agridex.
Oh,
It's
that's-
the aquatic approved MSO,
Okay.
so the only one.
there was one years ago that we got to try, like CWC, do you remember that? Does anybody remember that? I don't know. Yeah, CW, so not all surfactants are created equal, right? That stuff was very watery. The whole point of a surfactant is to help the product get into the plant easier, right? So in terms of like knotweed, we all know the shape of knotweed, we all know the height of knotweed, the shape of the leaves, and how when you put any sort of moisture on it, those leaves sag. So are you wanting to use a watery surfactant that will then all of a sudden cause stuff to run and drip? You want that to be as non-drippable as possible. So surfactants, understanding that they're not all the same. We use Signet Plus.
So we switched over to Signet. There's only 3 aquatic approved surfactants in the state. So and Signet's one of them. We switched to Signet so that we're not having confusion using the wrong one of the wrong sites. And if this backpack is mixed with terrestrial and now I want to go spray something by the water, so we switched only to Signet. Depending on what plant you're treating, you might increase surfactant. So swallowwort, increase your surfactant versus some of your other ones. Pretty much we use a 1/2 ounce per gallon on everything we do, and then can up it sometimes based on the plants. Is that?
Yeah, thank you.
And there's nothing about surfactants on
Yeah.
right out of
I
it.
used to know in the past that some of the surfactants had bigger negative impacts than chemicals.
Yeah, that's the reason that it seems like most of us have switched to only using aquatic approved surfactants is, to protect our fish and frogs and make sure, you know, you certainly can use the non-aquatic approved for upland situations, but exactly what Drew's talking about is like, now you run the risk of, did you trip over that sprayer before you mix something else in it? Because if not, you run the risk of hurting those fish and frogs, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to protect our habitats, so.
And for glyphosate products, you can get a Farmer, Ranger Pro, whatever, all those terrestrial mixes. I only buy rodeo. I spend an extra $3 for a 2.5 gallon jug, and I only buy aquatic approved glyphosate, so we only have that one, so it doesn't get mixed up for the extra $3. It's not worth it because Ryan hasn't told me no yet. On reimbursements, he's okay with me spending extra money on it.
We use, Aquanine.
Yeah, Aquanine and rodeo,
Yeah.
they're all the same. The biggest downfall to using Red River for chemical is the Signet Plus comes in 2.5 gallon jugs instead of 1 gallon jugs. So keep your 1 gallon jugs and pour back in.
Hey Drew, did you say you use 1 ounce per gallon of
Half.
Signet? A half ounce?
Half ounce per gallon.
That's what you typically use.
And I mean, does anyone else use more?
I use 28 per solar. That was our choice. Unless, yeah, it's not really what we want.
Yeah. We up ours for now.
You guys ever like change droplet sizes and stuff like that? Is that a big thing?
You really can't do much with a backpack sprayer. The tips, like, you can get a stream or you can get a mist. And there's not much in between.
On your pressure,
Yep.
like every pump you do changes
It's
everything.
different, yes.
So,
So there's really not much you can do on backpacks.
Okay.
Any questions on that table or any of this?
I just have a silly question. What is the glove of death?
We want to do it. Oh, so we just put on a glove and grab a sponge. I don't have to put on gloves.
So you can go buy those car washing gloves, you know, that's like, it's spongy kind of, really. And you can we put a couple layers of gloves on and then put that in, and you can literally put the product put it right on your glove, and you can swap it if you're in an area where there's, you know, T&E or you don't want collateral damage or risk thereof, and you literally, works really good with frag if there's 8 stalks, and you just, you know, go, and you're
you don't
not
even have to get the car wash gloves. We use like the cotton carpenter gloves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just
and-
anything to soak in.
Yeah, over
product.
chemical resistant gloves.
Yep.
And then, yeah.
You want to come out and glove a desk and stuff?
Yeah, come on, let's do it.